she couldn't get this product out the door to save her damn life. So she kept on re-engineering it and re-engineering it. And it's an incredible model now that you can go to the engineering room and see how it's even better now and smaller. But does anyone need that? I mean, do you need it? Do you need that now? You've got a cell phone, right? Does anyone have a GPS action? Anyone have like a Tinder or other type of activity where you can tell who is nearby you based on GPS right now? I've got five apps like it right now. It's the only way I know how to date. Seriously, that's it. It's the only way my generation people know how to date now is we've got this little app that tells you this person's right there. Much easier than having to talk to people. If she would have gone through the minimum viable product and understood and listened to the advice we're trying to give, she could have had this market before Apple's battery was able to deal with them. And we could have owned that industry. So we could have put that chip in. We had a great launch carrot. We already had a launch plan that was ready. You may have heard of Comic-Con. Well, we had rights with Warner Brothers to get the Star Trek logo made into the little badge so you could walk around with it and be able to connect with each other. Well, now I got launch. That's a huge business, but we lost out on it. And that's all because she didn't understand. She wanted to make the chip the best possible. It had to communicate and provide all the information and go after all the verticals that she wanted, as opposed to make one damn thing that got Star Trek fans to get together with other Star Trek fans to talk about when the next movie's gonna come out. All she needed to do. And if we would have done that, she would be retired now. Or at least would have sold the company off for quite a bit of money and she'd be back researching and driving a really stupidly nice car. She didn't have that opportunity. Or she didn't take advantage of that opportunity. So I just want to drive home that the MVP is really useful for getting you to actually look at what's the absolute minimum that you need. It's not what you think you need, it's what we really need. So Ryan's a great example. We went through this.
So what my grandmother used to say long ago, he who hesitates is lost.
Right. Well, and it's okay to wait about when you're timing to enter the market, but you need to just get out, let the market decide, because they are going to decide. You know, Ryan's a great example. So with their Players Revolution, they just did their alpha test, and it was fantastic. The technology on it, the data all showed everything. It makes it very, very easy to get to launch money, to launch and get money and get users. But if they had less resources, they could have done it with even less technology. They didn't need to, and it's something that you have to decide for yourself. What are the resources that you have in order to get to a minimum viable product, and what features do you think it's worth waiting on? And that's your own risk. You have to be willing to take it. I will tell you that if you go to a VC or an angel and you explain why you went to this, why you did these features, you should have a really good explanation to everything that wasn't completely minimal viability. Because it's now the analyst's job to get rid of you if you don't understand that, because now you show that you waste money. And again, we want you to fail on the first $1 million, not on the first $5 million. That seems like an important thing. I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot of money to you, but to the fund, where you've got 20 investments, that's a lot of money that's being wasted, and we'd really rather change it. So I really want to point that as the most important thing, and why anything to take away is that that's great. Let's walk into what it actually is. When you talk about a minimum viable product, think about the actual core activity that you're selling to someone. The only reason people are talking to you at all is because you're giving them something that they don't otherwise have. It might be entertainment, it might be a service, it might be a product. All of them gives them some level of giggles or jollies that makes their life slightly better than it was before. What's the minimum that they need to make it worth their time to say, I'll buy? So, is everyone here, who's in the tech space for their startup? Anyone not in the tech space? Okay, so for not in tech space, it's harder. So, could you tell a little bit about the areas that you're in?
Oh, I own a sleepy trucking company. Yeah, it's old school. We're still waiting for the buggy whip and the horse to come back. You know?
That's harder for a minimum viable product, but you need a truck.
Yeah.
That's it, or at least you need customers.
Yeah,
you can always get them. You can rent the truck.
Yes, I have a startup and we're reinventing cinema, taking theater environment and going into the venue and turning it into a theater.
Okay.
And combining with it fine dining and live performance.
Okay, so that's actually a really good example of how complex a minimum viable product can be, is you might think that you need an entire facility. You probably don't. You probably find a gymnasium someplace and say, well, people actually do it once. And if you could prove that people went to it for a discounted model, instead of it being the $20 movie seat, you sold it for $5 and you gave them Hostess cakes instead of premium cakes, maybe that would prove that it's enough. Or maybe it would prove that it doesn't work. But you see how that's, like when you're developing your minimum viable product, you say, well, here's my grand idea. I need someone to try the core concept.
I'm also using other resources in
Okay.
the beginning project that we're doing on April 29th. So I'm actually going to a restaurant that already has everything that I need.
There you go.
The screens, the dance floor, the chef.
Fantastic. So that allows you to have a testable market. I would think that if you really wanted to, you could probably even do it faster if you went to a local high school or grade school. Out here, kindergartens are probably big enough, where they have a theater where you could say, what if we just showed a movie real quickly and got some kind of data as to whether people
I agree.
in the general, because you can make it that simple. But you have to make the determination of, is it close enough to what I'm actually building?
Right.
So that's the hardest part. If anyone thinks that they have, if anyone you talk to says that they have the answer, they're probably wrong. Because no one knows until you try it. So you have to figure it for yourself, and a lot of this is gonna be trial and error. I will say from myself, the biggest loss that I've seen in any technology has been the inventor and not the technology. I've never seen the best technology make it to market successfully. I've seen the crappiest technology make it to market successfully. I've seen incredible marketers or technologists make it to market. But in the last 16 years of working at universities, and I'm on my third university now, the best technology outside of biotech does not get to market because you get too hung up in all the specifics. I can give another example. Anyone ever do analytical chemistry at all? So we've got this one great technology that takes a laser, splits it, reconvenes it at the site that you're looking at, and can give you absolute specification and absolute specificity for whatever you're looking for. So if I want to find TATP, remember the London shoe bomber? It's a type of explosive that you can make. Any of us can go to Home Depot right now. Within 45 minutes, I can build up a batch for you. It's stable for 5 days and it goes away. Under current testing techniques, that bomb explosive is only stable for 3 days, and then it breaks down into its component parts and is not determinable by any method of chemistry after 5 days. So I can make it, I can wait 3 days, and then I can carry it, and by the time you find me as the police, you can't prove that I had an explosive with me because it's already broken down into something else. You can't prove it anymore. I have laser technology that can do that. Not only can it do it can do it instantaneously. Not only can it do it instantaneously, I can do it through 60 meters. So I can walk around, and you're walking through the airport, and I can pick out that you have ever touched TAP within the past 60 days. Because I have that level of specificity, got an atom level. However, my inventor wants to get the Nobel Prize. He has a very expensive house in San Diego's La Jolla Shores. He has no need for money, and he thinks money is beneath him. He turned down $20 million in angel money for, was it a 20% stake in 2007. If anyone remembers what 2007 markets were like, that's impossible valuation. Wouldn't take it, because he wanted the technology to be better. He didn't want 60 meters, he wanted 150 meters. He didn't want it to be this big, he wanted it to be this big. That's too much specification. It doesn't need to be that great. All that the military wanted was any damn thing, and they didn't care how much it cost. It could have cost $20 million. Fine. He wanted it to cost $10,000. Didn't need to. And because of that, it's still not on the market, and the patent expires in 2 years. Never gonna get to the market. That's not true. The people who've already read the patent will get it to market in 2 years when the patent expires. It will be out there. You will see it in 2 years. 2 years and a day from March 9th, you will see it. That's a thing for you to worry about, because you need to be focused on just what it is to let the market try. You may be surprised as to what the market wants. They totally may be shocked that they want to buy your thing and not for the reason you're thinking about. Just, oh, Chip, you're fixing your hair. So that's like the reasoning behind it. Let's go into a little bit deeper. What's a question you have about your minimum viable product, what you're working on now? Let's work with what you're doing.
Mike,
Sure.
I see a lot of conversations about MVPs going on B2C space. I work in the B2B space.
Mhm.
I work for a large company. We piloted a few products. Could you also address the fact that for an MVP, you need a critical feedback,
Yeah.
critical mass of feedback, which is missing in the B2B space because you don't have 1,000 customers coming in telling you whether this feature works or not. You probably have a market of 1,000 companies out there.
But you
How
have,
do you-
so I would disagree with that.
Okay, go ahead.
You have more than 1,000 customers because the customers aren't just the people who buy it. They're the people who use it. So if you're selling into the oil and gas industry, how many thousands of people will be using the thing that you're adding to their marketplace? It could be part of the supply chain. So it could be the accountants as to why they're willing to buy this. It could be risk management. What risks are you adding to their process, their supply chain? It could be the people who are actually paying for it. It could be the chemist who you're replacing. It could also be who's your competition. If you're adding something new to the world now, you're taking someone else's money away. That's life. That's what we do. You're taking someone else's money away. Okay, why would they care about that? Maybe they would be fine with that if you could figure out a way to add money to both of you. Maybe you could figure out a way that if they added yours, they could get even more sales. You're not taking sales away. So you have your minimum viable product in B2B, I would say is more complex because it's not, I'm selling you this thing
Right. and
I'm asking you whether you will use this as a microphone, which I think is stupid because it's too damn small. But it's not to most people. I just have giant hands. I would think that the minimum viable product that I would go after is what do you need to get it into that sales cycle? And at a company, that sales cycle might be a lot more expanded. But it also could be what's their problem that you're solving. So the ultimate thing you have to answer to yourself as to whatever venture you're doing is, why am I doing this? Why is it better, cheaper, faster, or just a better replacement? Or maybe it's the only alternative to something.
And the point that you made is something that, in my experience working with large enterprises, that I found is that we all think that minimum viable product is about getting the features right so you can economically sell it to your customers. But I found in my experience that maybe I just started the wrong problem, but it's also figuring out what the right problem to solve is.
Truer words have not been spoken, certainly in this room. Yes, that's critical because not everyone knows. The Newton solved a lot of really critical problems that no one really cared about at the time. No one cared about. They just didn't. It just wasn't as important of a device. And now who uses their Newton to even make calls, which is what took over their market? That's a weirdly weird, the minimum viable product went from, PDA, and then cell phone really took on, and then it was a cell phone that was a PDA, and now no one makes phone calls on it except for to their mom every other month or so. It's a really weird life cycle. So you have to, if you figure out, when you're looking at your MVP, looking at what you're trying to develop, why does it matter for now? Who are the customers? And what's the absolute minimum you need to try that will tell you whether it's worth another $1 of your time? And everyone's time is worth at least $1. So is it worth any of your time to keep on playing with this, or when should you kill it? Another way of looking at MVP is how should you pivot, or when should you give up? So pivoting is a big phrase that they love in the blankisms, because it explains what we were doing, and not just the basketball application.
Sure.
Your original product might not be what you're looking at, and you may end up having to go here because your customers will tell you something different. But they could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing you have to think of when you're looking at your market. Like if you look at market research, the reason that market research has failed versus minimum product is that we find that when you ask people what they would do, you don't get nearly as reliable as a result as if you actually make them pay for it. if you pay them to give you an answer, they wanna make you happy. They do. People generally wanna make you happy. There will be some who are jerks. But generally, if you pay someone for a market research project, they kinda wanna make you happy, or at least they don't wanna cause controversy, or they just don't care. They're just done. But if they're paying for it and they're not happy, they will tell you why. And in this day and age, it's really easy to get feedback as to why someone's unhappy. And unhappy feedback is very valuable, because the valuable feedback, the people who are positive, they might talk about it, or they may just buy more. But the unhappy feedback you will get instantaneously, and it will never, ever stop. It will be large and voluminous, and it'll be fun for you to manage, and I wish you all well doing that. But that's what makes you be able to fix what your product is, and it at least tells you, what is it that I'm really solving? Why is this, what is the actual need that my thing is fixing? And is there really any need? It could be that you just get lucky that it's something that fills a tiny time gap. But be prepared that that time gap will change over time. That time gap will expire, and now you've got to think of something else. So your product might fail because the time has passed. So that's another thing that MVP tells you is, if you run it long enough, if you run your entire business operation on always being a minimum viable product, you're always adding the next little thing onto it, then you might tell you, well, here's where the tastes are changing, and they no longer want this. And unless you're Microsoft and everyone's stuck with having just change to the next level of Windows, you might be stuck. You might be offering them things that they just don't care about, and then suddenly your market erodes or you're gone. So I would recommend thinking about that as one of your key things when you're putting your plans together, is really think of, what do I actually need to do?
Right.
And why does it matter?
Yeah, and something too, kind of along those lines, that's important to touch on, is the minimum viable product, it tests the essence of what you're selling. So like Facebook, they started off with just a couple pictures of yourself, and then you can also email your friends. And so that's how they tested, do people want to connect with each other? I mean, if they had released today's version of Facebook, you would never know what people are actually buying, just because there are so many variables. I mean, you can sell stuff on Facebook, you can buy it. There's, you can send your friends little, I mean, I don't know, I wish I was more up to date on that stuff. But there are so many variables now that it's hard to test. And when you're testing a product, you want to mitigate the number of variables so you can actually validate, each one.
Absolutely, and I think one of the critical things, another great example is Amazon. Their original business plans were going to sell books online. Who's bought a book on Amazon in forever? I don't remember the last time I bought a book from them. Well, you're good, you read. I don't know how to read, I'm a lawyer. And I have to wear the glasses then, and I refuse to break down and wear reading glasses. I don't accept that about myself. But I bought, every week I get, the pissy UPS driver in my neighborhood comes to my house with like a cat litter, which I'm sure he doesn't like carrying 100 pounds of cat litter. But everything that I need is delivered to my house from Amazon. Just is. That's just easier for me. And that was not their original business plan, or at least wasn't what they got funding on.
Right.
It was, we could just sell this one simple thing. Books are all about the same size, they weigh all about the same amount, and it costs the same amount to ship. And that was their minimum viable product. Will people buy this online? Now it's, can we send a drone to their house with fresh food? What the hell has that got to do with books? Not a lot, but they've been able to expand. So if you look at their original idea that they sold themselves on, it was really a minimum viable product. One thing sold one way. Now you can actually go to Amazon stores, physical stores, which is ironic that they have physical stores now when they replaced all the other physical stores. Same thing with your technology. Take the absolute minimum thing that you need and you break it down to that core element. What's the value I'm giving to one person? And what would they be willing to pay me for? If they're not willing to pay you in your alpha or beta tests, you probably don't have enough strength yet. You might not end up charging them money for it, but if you don't think they'd be willing to pay you for it, you probably don't know what you're selling. Sorry?
Alpha bid is different than MVP.
It is.
MVP is what are the standards in the market? What's the differentiator? Why does the customer care? Put that into a product and go out and see if we either get first revenue or market share.
I wouldn't.
That's the test.
I wouldn't necessarily worry about market share, because the market you're not going to.
It depends on what space you're in.
It completely depends on the size and scope of what you're doing. I would generally look at are people willing to buy it at all, and then second, are people willing to use it?
In the community space, it's all about market share. It's a non-revenue.
Okay, that's a different space than the broader market of what we're looking. The broader market of will someone pay for it, and the payment is just getting users. That's the payment, and that's another way of looking at it. And when you're describing it to people who are going to fund you, you put it in their language that they're used to. Because if I'm a Silicon Valley app guy and I'm worried about dollars, and I don't know about community space and why it's different, you change your pitch. So you say, well, our minimum viable product is this community metric. This is the metric that matters to us. And if I can say this is the metric that says we should go forward with it, then when we hit that, we should go forward, and you should fund our company. And here's why that valuation matters. So if you create your marketing pitch, your funding pitch around what MVP means to you, you have a much greater chance of raising capital, and at least raising capital from smart money. You might get lucky, but if you want to get smart money in it, you need to be able to define, or I would recommend saying that you define what minimum viable product is and what a successful product is. And everyone's success is different. Sometimes it could just be users. It could be dollars generated. It could be products sold. It could be community market share. But if you define what success is, and then define, well, if it succeeds at this level, we need another $4 million in development money to get it to the product that will actually turn a profit for us. Now you set a threshold where you've already met the first milestone. And has anyone here raised capital before? So we all know that it's we fund based on milestones. You might get a $6 million, $10 million round, but you're not getting a $10 million check. You're probably getting tranches, right? You got tranches, right? And when you hit milestone X, you get this amount of money is released. When you hit the next milestone, you get the next round of money. So you should be prepared for that, because that's basically telling you what they're looking for, which is already minimum viable product. It's the way we've been doing VC since the 60s. We just didn't have a good term for it. We just didn't call it that, and it wasn't promoted that way. So that's kind of where we're going with that. Does that make sense as a basic standard? What resources do you think you could use to try to help you define your MVP? Anyone? No? Well, who are your customers? The first thing to ask would be, first thing that I would look at when I'm defining an MVP for myself is, what are our customers really going to care about that make it both a minimum product, but also will tell me what they really need. So if you have a way to get feedback from the minimum viable product, what is it that provides success for you? Because without that feedback, you're just selling something that's not complete.
Or should we define the problem that we're solving for, and based on that, we define our customer?
I would ask the customers what their different reasons are, because it's probably not all one customer. And you may find that there are segments that you solve better than, for some segments better than others. And it could be that your technology or your technology plan, you'll be able to grow out and be able to create a lot of different markets. And one of the big problems with entrepreneurs is you start realizing, I got this great idea. Oh my God, this can go into, remember we talked about this, like this can go into this and this and this. And here's what a VC wants. We had this conversation in November. This is why a VC will give you this huge valuation. But here are all the steps you need to make, and here's how you prove it. So
First, you need not to have a problem. That's what you're suggesting. Like first, you should define your customer. I think having a problem and focusing on the problem, what you're trying to solve for, will give us like more focus on the customers who could benefit if we solve this problem.
that's probably another way of looking at it. Call it a minimum, internally, call it your minimum viable problem. Because if it's just a little problem, is anyone willing to pay for it? But if it's a big problem, and you've got enough that solves part of that problem, that's a really good way of looking at it. I think that you should probably go out and trademark that and go sell books and do a book tour. Totally. Minimum viable problem. That's a much better way of looking at it. I really think that that's a better way to characterize it because you're answering it.
So Mike, do you use any of the product management frameworks, tools?
I don't because I cover the entire breadth of the university and I have to do it really ridiculously quickly. I'm in office of one right now and I have technologies, material science, I have music technology, which I don't understand the damn lick of. I've never done this before. I did a lot of things in the app space. I've done a lot of things in biosciences, which is a completely different world because
When it comes to MVP, there's a whole space in the product management world, right?
right.
Pragmatic marketing, 280, black box, there's a whole bunch of groups. There's a group here in town called product management. Meets every once in a while.
Oh, great.
We've actually called it minimal lovable product now. It's a different kind of conversation. And then there's all the startup stuff, of course. We talk about tools.
I think that those are great tools. I haven't used them because for me, the minimum viable product is getting it to a licensee. Like my thing is, if someone at Texas Instrument will get into a meeting with me about a license, that's my minimum viable product, and I can do very easily. So my problems are easier to solve than probably yours, because I don't need to raise money. It doesn't matter to me. I have the federal government, which used to fund everything, but you may have heard it doesn't anymore. So my world is changing as of 4 or 5 months ago.
Maybe another angle of this would be, how do you manage your portfolio?
A portfolio is harder because you've got so many things that you have to play with, and you have to be willing to cut things. The hardest thing is that, in my world, I have to tell people that the life's work is an ugly baby. That is not an easy thing to do, because someone's been working on it since they were a postdoc, and they're 30 years into their career working on one problem, and they think they've got a solution, and I have to tell them, no one cares. That is a very tricky thing to do. Luckily, National Science Foundation actually provides me a wonderful tool called the National Science Foundation I-Core program, which allows the faculty to learn how bad their solution is for the rest of the market without me having to tell them, which is what keeps my relationship good. Because it's hard for, if you told me that my whole life's work was useless, I may take that as saying that I'm worthless. And it could be that my whole life's work is fundamental research, and it made the world of that level of science better for everyone else, but no one's going to pay you for it, and that's a tough thing. For portfolios, it's balancing what your portfolio is and what your time frame is. So as a VC, our time frame was 7 years in the max. So I need to have everything perform within the first 3 years, and I really need it in 9 months to hit your first milestone, or I'm just going to cut the cord because I need to take the fund, the $50 million that I have is all committed. I want to move it to the ones who are showing that they already hit their milestone. You might hit your milestone next month and then blow everyone else away. Statistics say that that doesn't work that way.
Just seeing some similarities between what you have to do to the portfolio with products in it is similar in the entrepreneur who's got his product backlog and has to pick and choose which of these is going to make the MVP for this particular sprint.
And we have a different time frame for us because we're an institution that's not gonna, we're gonna last longer than every company you know. Every university I've worked at is going to be around 500 years from now. No company I know is going to be here 500 years from now. Google will not be here then. I'm pretty good on that bet, and if it turns out I'm wrong, you can't collect because I'll be long dead. I'm sure I'll be dead in 500 years, absolutely.
Are you sure that education, the university is going to be around that long with when you can get educated over the net? Like
Yeah,
this, or
statistics are long-term data studies have shown that learning purely over online is not as sufficient as taking either a blended course or an in-person course. Again, we talked a little bit earlier where we're seeing some innovative programs where now you do your homework in class and you do all your reading and teaching yourself of the material outside of class. So you go and you watch the recorded lecture, and then you come into class and work on the projects together. That's actually a better learning environment for things that are related to an office environment education, because it's more like what you'll learn when you go into an office. Not necessarily the same for every characteristic and every type of education. Certainly if you're learning music, you should probably play the music. But
I think, just briefly, that universities might not be around in 20 years from now in the physical form that they are now. And I also think that education, just throwing it out there, because I think about this stuff, like you get like certain coding schools that they go on for an intense program for 3 months, and then from that you can raise your amount of income that you're making dramatically. And universities, you put up, $100,000 into it, and they can't get a job for 3 years. So I think that the business model of universities is at risk right now.
it's at risk. It had a turning point about a few years ago. We were really afraid of University of Phoenix and National University. They had their own growing pains. They've taken a huge downturn in the last several years. And because of it, also, we've had enough data points now to show that those online education programs, the strictly online ones, do not return nearly as well as having an in-person institution does. It's changed. What's lucky is that the larger your university, the more likely it is to remain around, or the more specialized. The ones who are in the middle ground, I think you're going to find a lot of them may go away. I think you're going to find a lot of privates are under more pressure themselves that can't be able to be like a USC, where they can say, USC will be around for 1,000 years. They have more Olympic medals than all but 5 countries in the world. They are their own powerhouse. They have enough endowment. They'll be around longer than the US. That's them. Not everyone's USC. Universities that serve a state interest, because of the laws in states, it takes an incredible amount of time to change the legal framework for how education is done. Texas is very challenging compared to even California. And it's actually easy, it's more opportunistic for universities here in Texas than it is in California. But there's still a lot about the footprint. There's a lot that goes into the education world that's outside of just the innovation space. And universities have finally caught on to what needs to change. My entire role is new at the university, and I used to be just a technology transfer director person. So I'm the patent lawyer who takes in the disclosures and then licenses it out. Now I'm building an entire innovation curriculum for our entire students, for all 38,000 students. And when we launch it, we're hoping that it will count towards everyone's degree program, both who's at the university as well as certificate programs outside the university, and it'll all be one class where it'll be someone who just came back from serving a term overseas, now is working at a company and needs a certificate, and will be with an 18-year-old kid who just graduated from Frisco High School, and all in the same classroom, so that we can blend in the environment. Because we do find that the in-person part is what creates the most amount of value from the diversity that happens in a university setting, versus just a pure online one where the diversity is not really an advantage to the program. Kind of a long-winded answer, but it's...
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask a minimum viable question.
Sure.
The man over here was mentioned a phrase that just came out, and I don't think it was just a random phrase perhaps. He said, what is a critical mass of perhaps of getting that feedback? And I'm curious, are there tools in that? And is there certain quantifiable things that you can get enough feedback as you're building that?
There is.
a great idea.
It really depends on your industry, because it's all about market segment. So you really have to look, if it's an app, there's even each thing segment. So the first thing to do is to look at what is it that you need to prove? What is your market space? If you're in bio, completely different world. And National Science Foundation wants everyone to do 100 calls during their I-Core program. That's 5 weeks long. Calling 100 customers can be very challenging if you're in the bio space. There aren't 100 pharmaceutical companies, but there are 100 people who work in the pharmaceutical industry that are interested. And there's certainly 100 insurance companies, and there's certainly, once you throw in the national insurers as well, and regulators, those are people that are kind of customers, and they're impacted by your sale. So it teaches you to kind of look at what are all the different things that your sale does, because you're not just selling me to you. It's probably not me selling you lemonade on my corner stand. It's probably impacting the rest of your environment. Is the regulatory impact that you need? You'd be surprised how many regulatory impacts there can be, even for something just like an app. It could be, if you're selling an app, which store are you selling it? Well, there might be regulations about that, and there certainly could be what are the things that you're taking away from other people who are selling in the same space. A lot of app revenue, everyone's assuming that your revenue will be from a freemium. So what's the advertising value? Well, you're taking away from someone else's advertising. So they're a competitor for you, but they're also someone that could allow you to cross-market. So I would look at what's the thing that's closest, and who are you taking money away from? Because you should be taking money away from someone. If you're not, you're weird, and that's great. Celebrate it, and go with being weird.
What are the most common mistakes you see when people develop an MVP? Is that right?
They're wrong about it being minimum. They're making a viable product, not a minimum viable. Well, everyone does. Again, my faculty member, man, it's $1 billion technology that will never make $1 for him. And that's too bad, because $1 billion, anyone could use an extra $1 billion. Everyone needs another $1 billion. Even if you already have $1 billion, you could use another $1 billion. It's really the minimum part of it. So the hardest part of minimum viable is really digging down. What's the absolute minimum that you need to prove something? And does that something matter? So developing your figuring out what is it that you need to prove, and who are you proving it to? Are you proving it to yourself? Are you proving it to your parents who might be funding you? Are you proving it to a potential angel investor, a venture capitalist? Are you proving it to the Apple store to just get into their damn store? What is it that you need to prove to someone? If you could figure out what it is that you really need to prove, then what are the absolute minimum things you need to do to prove what a success is or not? And it might not be enough of a success to be the full-on thing. It could be success means someone else will believe you and will get on board. It could be that if you build a minimum, I build my own app myself, and I provide a minimum enough effort into it that shows that this is a great concept, I can recruit a great app developer who's sitting over there coding right now as we speak. Anyways, that's a minimum viable product. That really is. If I can convince someone like him to get on my team, because I don't know how to code, that's a minimum viable product that got him involved that now means that we're going to succeed.
I can give you a tangible example.
Please.
It's not mine, but when I
Even-
lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there was a store that these people who had come over from, I'm not even sure where, probably somewhere in China. And they had come over, I don't know how they got here, I'm sure it was something horrible that happened. And all they could afford, because it was out of their own pocket, was to open a store where they sold some canned goods and a few other things. And as they made some money, because they were self-funded, they set up a counter in the back, and they had takeout food. And then as they made some more money, they bought some tables and chairs. And then eventually, they rented the space next door, and they had a full restaurant.
Okay.
And I come from a long line of small business owners. When you said about trucks, I thought, well, my great-great-grandparents had buggy tops and horse whips, actually. And it went 3 generations, it became, drop tops and car antennas. But the idea was they were self-funded, and this was all they could afford
Yeah.
at the moment. So that was their minimum product, was some canned goods and some small amount of vegetables that they could go down to the vegetable market and get and sell. And it reminded me of what you were saying. And this is very, very, very old-time business model. If you got off of the boat from Eastern Europe, like my family did, you had X amount in your pocket. This was all you did, and you built these businesses.
And that's what we're going back to. I mean, we
Yeah,
had,
it really is what you're describing.
you can blame me on part of the problem from the 90s. We blew up, we made venture capital too accessible. It was too easy for anyone with a dumbass idea to get money and then give it away for free and make it up on volume, which we all know did not work out well.
No.
We talked about the amount of wallpaper that we have now that's completely useless but for anything but wallpaper or getting rid of spills.
Yeah.
That's all that it did, and that destroyed a lot of the market, and that's why MVP kind of brings us back as a tool to say, before 1992, what would it take for you to be able to say, I should quit my day job to do this? What is it that I actually have, and here's the minimum amount I needed, And now VCs have realized that that's a really great tool that they lost because there were ridiculous valuations and they knew that there was a bigger sucker than them who would buy their stake out. Well, those days have passed. Sorry, if you're in this room, you probably missed out on those fun days, and you didn't get to cash in on them, which is too bad. But for the rest of us, we have to make something that actually works. And minimum viable product, and all it is just another way of repackaging our old tool of why does anyone care? No one cares about your startup technology idea, unless you can tell why. And the easiest way is to test it. Would someone want to buy this? Do you like my lemonade in my neighborhood? No, it just tastes like sugar. All right, we failed. Too much sugar in lemonade. This is not a good stand. Do you want me delivering newspapers to your house? No, you keep on putting it through my bloody front window. All right, delivery methodology was the bad part. These are the simple things that we've forgotten as a culture that MVP is really good about. It tries to bring us back to what's the absolute minimum you need to deliver in order to have someone care about your product offering. That's the whole thing. It's just bringing it back to that. Portfolio management's the same thing, except we have to deal with it with a larger one and say, well, I have to say, here's my patent budget. Here are ones I take bets on. And I'm wrong all the time too. I tend to be right more than not, but I think a lot of it is just that I've been on a 25-year string of good luck.
Do you get an opportunity to work with your peers like at UTD and SMU?
They hadn't done that here in town before. None of the university's tech transfer offices played together. So I started a meeting. We do a quarterly meeting now for all the directors, and we're going to be doing industry days where we're going to invite local companies in and say, here's all of our tech in one vertical. So it makes it easy for companies to fly in, because it's hard to get people from the coast to get here. But when we can say we've got, and we're considering our region from Texas Tech all the way east to Louisiana. So we've got 11 universities in this region that are all getting to play together, and it makes it easier to get companies.
I was just thinking like Brian Chambers is relatively new over at UTD.
Yep.
Be more open.
Yeah, it's just, it's an unfunded mandate. How do we do all this? And it's a weirder place here. In California, they didn't do it. When I moved into San Diego, they didn't need to, because you could just go to UC San Diego. And then they had problems. So then they said, well, we need to find someone else. Well, there's Scripps, Salk, Burnham, and San Diego State. And there's 6 others. We're all willing to play. And then we all got to play together. And then we realized that none of us compete. And we actually can work well together, because if you want to do imaging, you might go to Scripps. And if you have the actual chemistry of it, you might go to Salk. You actually have the compound. And if you need someone to do the market analysis, San Diego State had the only business school for 50 years in town. So we were all able to figure out a way to play together. And we're trying to do that in the North Texas region, but we also have harder geography, because I don't know if any of you have ever taken the 35, but it's horrific. Yes, it's lovely. It makes me wish I was back in LA. LA traffic is easier to deal with than 35. I will go on record saying that. Some days. Today it took me 30 minutes though to get here, which isn't. So I think we're getting close on. If we want to talk some more, I'm here. Thank you very much for letting us all make this a conversation, and I really appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if not, let me know, and we'll figure out what we do next.
Mike, what's your mandate? Sorry, I probably missed the
Sure.
intro, but what's the mandate? What's UNT trying to do with this?
What are we trying to do?
office that you set up?
My office, I'm in charge of all innovation and commercialization programs at the university. So part of what we do is manage the technology transfer function. We're also developing an innovation curricula campus-wide that will be offered to both our students as well as to the larger community. And it's about trying to look at how we can be able to change our own business model so that we are relevant 20 years from now. Because if we don't, if we stay the exact same way that universities were for 200 years, we're dead. And we choose not to die.
And you're only working with university students, but I know Plano ISD has a lot of programs that they try to get high school students into.
Nope. We're ubiquitous across our program will be ubiquitous across the entire region. So whoever wants to play, we want them to talk with us. There's always something at a university. We're big enough that we have a program that we can figure out a way that we are related. And at some point, if you're successful, you're going to need to hire one of our people. So I can justify just about anything because of that. So, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Great to meet you all. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Well, in closing, we'd like to thank you guys for coming out
Sorry,
tonight.
Mr. Hank.
We really appreciate it. Mike did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. We will have another meetup coming up next month. We're probably going to have it at Top Golf. For those of us that are working on MVPs right now or have concepts that we're fostering, this is going to be more of just a mixer, getting together, just kind of talking about it. Like I said, it'd be at Top Golf. We have it on the meetup page right now. And then in May, it looks like we are working with Brian Chambers over at UTD. They have a new facility they're going to be opening, so we'll be probably over there in May. More specifics about that later, obviously. Yeah, if that's about it. Feel free to hang out for a little while, ask some questions. There's
We
one.
are forming a kind of a sister meetup to this for sports and technology.
We are, yes. And this guy's the
If you
director.
are interested in that, or you know some people that really are interested in the marriage of sports and technology, we're getting a lot of interest in that. So
Yes.
we'll put a link on this meetup page
Yes.
to that.
Yes.
We're doing there.
Sports technology,
Couldn't-
correct.
Probably talk to, this is an opportunity, as a matter of fact, I'd like to show a product that we got in final beta, it's in sports.
Great.
And I'll talk to you one-on-one, but it also illustrates another thing about, think about MVP. First place, the application is a natural language product called SQL, SAYQL. And our beta test is on a Major League Baseball database. So what's your favorite baseball team?
His favorite team's the Rangers.
Yeah, just pick that.
His favorite team's the Rangers.
Texas Rangers players with the most total home runs.
You guys going to Dallas Startup Week, the first week of April?
Okay, now
That's-
that's natural language, that's not SQL. Everybody know what, I mean, a lot of you know what SQL SQL is.
Yes.
So what this product does is convert with our NLU, Natural Language Understanding module, that natural language into SQL and gets the exact answer, which is better than Google
I
from
think-
the standpoint that, well, nothing's better than Google, but let me just tell you that.
I think this
let me
is
just tell you
great, but I think
that,
this
if you
is
want
a special.
exact answers,
Let's do this.
my
Let's do
theory
this
is that
outside of the big room.
Facts live in databases. So anyway, I'm gonna hit the first place, you might, who do you think the Texas, this is a trivia thing. Who do you think the Texas Rangers players won the most total home runs? It's Rafael Palmeiro, 320, then Juan Gonzalez. So any ad hoc question, but here's the MVP. I'm a pioneer in this natural language. In fact, I unretired after 45 years in IT because I'm a pioneer going back to the 80s, had the first database application in the US had natural language. But that's a problem when you talk to VCs that say, look, people have tried this natural language for 40 years. And so the MVP itself, they're gonna say, they always have a problem. There's always a problem with this kind of product. And the problem is, there's one thing, there's several ways that you can say that question. And
Let's
so
let's
the
let's
product-
take
Yeah,
this
we
let's take this offline.
Yes.
Let's talk with this offline because I think
Yeah,
we want to break it and let people get a chance
we'll
to
break,
get through
but
it.
this is certainly something that would be good for the
I'll talk
sports
to him
tech
offline.
and also, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So anyways, guys, yes, Dallas Startup Week is coming up. That's obviously something that everyone should have a presence in or at. It's a big deal.
That one's coming
I
up,
think
the guy from Shark Tank is gonna be Frisco over there charging. money
Yeah.
to get in.
Yeah,
There's some
Hirschbeck,
other stuff going on.
Hirschbeck's gonna be here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Dallas Startup Week is coming up. That's gonna be a big deal. Do you know the dates on that? April?
It's the first, second, third, or.
Okay, so yeah, it'll definitely be before we meet again. So, do check that out. Tons of great resources there. And then to close on that Topgolf meetup that I was talking about earlier, the Mixer. If you just go RSVP and tell us the day of the week and the date that works, general time frame works best for you. We're just kind of trying to take a pulse for what days work best for our members, so we can kind of start angling towards those days. But other than that, feel free to talk amongst yourselves, and we appreciate you guys coming out. Thanks a lot.
Oh, and real quickly, is there like a spot for emails on that list?
Yep. Yeah, there is.
I'll go ahead and send y'all out the
Did it make
those
it all the way
legal
around?
documents. I don't know if you got email. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
Cool. Well, there's like a lifetime coupon thing that I'll go ahead and send y'all, and it's for like legal templates for all of your like from startup to operating a business.
There you go.
That'd be pretty cool.
So let me ask you about your resolution.
Probably don't take the extra.
Oh yeah, Players Revolution. Yeah, it's basically the world of adult sports in the palm of your hand is kind of the concept.
He has business cards.
This is my, I went to law school to practice. I went to law school because I came in.
What
What do we do?